So when we understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then we understand great leadership, and this is what I address in my keynote, is about allowing somebody to reach their full potential.
That I could survive all of that. Perhaps it was in the cards for me, because you see, I think all of us are dealt a certain hand. I'm sure all of us are familiar with 5-card poker, and I believe in those 5 cards that we are dealt. The interesting thing is how we play that hand. And so I would espouse to each of you that our first card represents a body. In the game of life and in the hand that you've been dealt, you've been given a tremendous body. You don't have to treat it like a woodshed, but it's your vessel to shepherd you through this journey.
In my keynote, I will invite you to look at leadership in a new way. Emblematic of the problem of poor leadership is the cost to companies in the United States. It's actually a $536 billion cost. That's the annual cost that companies face in employee turnover and lost training, what I call lost opportunity costs. So when we lose people because of poor leadership, the cost to the individual company is absolutely staggering. And so part of my keynote is to illuminate not only the problem, but what is the solution?
Glenn is just amazing. He's an amazing communicator. He really connects with your audience, the audience. He really tries to pull examples from real life that will connect with you, that will help you guide you through your journey.
But in the game of life, and the hand that you are dealt, that body comes with the second card, which represents your relationships. You didn't choose your relationships. You didn't choose your mother. You didn't choose your father. But those were the relationships that you were given. That was the hand that you were dealt. And so often, towards our parents and those relationships, brothers and sisters, we carry these heavy bags of resentment and anger. The third card in the hand that we're dealt, I find is fascinating. And that represents a consciousness. And within your consciousness resides your spirituality. Now, for some of you who I know personally in this beautiful theater there this evening, your spirituality is very important to you. And for others, perhaps not so much, and that's fine. There's no judgment here. But you've been given a spirituality that resides within your consciousness.
I had the pleasure to see Glenn's keynote. It was fantastic. He does an incredible job of speaking, laying out the material. It's compelling, it's rewarding to listen to, and it's applicable when you walk out of the building.
The fourth card, to me, is a fascinating one. It represents your circumstances. In the game of life and in the hand that you've been dealt, you've all been given a set of circumstances. You didn't choose those circumstances. Some of you were born into wealth and opportunity. Perhaps some of you had a wonderful family life. Perhaps others were adopted, grew up poor. You didn't choose your circumstances, but in the game of life, how you deal with that hand makes all the difference.
I bring over 29 years of experience to my sales keynote, and I can tell you all companies want to find the rainmakers. They want to create the rainmakers. I believe that is possible with the right level of information and inspiration. See, I believe that people can be triggered if they're given the right information and the right level of inspiration. They can awaken that potentiality that resides within most salespeople. But it starts with what I call an awakening. And part of my sales keynote talks about a to sell or die consciousness. And that actually was the title of my first book many, many years ago, was To Sell or Die. And that wasn't just a title to try to shock people. That's literally the consciousness that I had, was if I don't sell, if I don't become that rainmaker, I'm not going to survive.
The fifth card I find fascinating. It's the card of choices. All of us have a certain set of choices. How you choose to respond to your circumstances, to deal with your relationships, how well you develop your consciousness and raise your self-awareness, and how you treat your body. In the game of life and in the hand that you were dealt, we all have that opportunity. I'd like to share 2 true stories with all of you this evening that I think illuminate the power of circumstances and choices, and to help give that narrative and paint that tapestry with a little bit more texture.
My sales keynote, I give a case study. In 1997, I was the top salesperson out of 235 reps for Pacific Belt Wireless. Now, I don't say that to be arrogant or egocentric. I share in my keynote, what does it take to be the #1 salesperson when you've got almost 250 other people breathing down your backs? How do you go to the top like that? That's part of what I'm going to be talking about in my sales keynote, is what kind of inner drive, inner motivation, inner self-awareness, what type of consciousness produces that type of result? Because I believe there's a lot of people on sales teams right now in corporations all over the United States that could be doing so much better.
Do I really need to be buying a $50,000 car? Could I buy a $15,000 car? Do I need a $1 million home when I could buy a $300,000 home? And it's all also, our socioeconomic status. Where are we coming from? What is the lens that we look at our lives through? And oftentimes we look at it through the prism of materialism, that we need these things to make ourselves feel successful and feel better. But at the end of the day, I think as you live a little bit longer and you go through these things, you realize you don't need materialism, and therefore you don't need debt. The debt actually brings anxiety, and that anxiety brings poor health.
Right. But
And so what I'm promoting is an awakening of our sensibilities. We live in a culture right now, the cultural zeitgeist, if you will, not full of the possibilities. And yet we are all spit from the pit of possibilities. I like to remind people that we can have and be and do anything, and we can leverage our awakenings, our losses, and the things that have not worked out in our lives. They teach us so much. And so our great takeaway here is awaken yourself to the possibility of living the life that you want to live.
Do his keynote speech on awakening, and it was fabulous. He really had the audience mesmerized, was very professional.
It was great to watch Glenn relate to the audience. Different aspects of his life could always relate to ours. He's an amazing communicator.
Welcome to Existential TV. Let me share a few fun facts with you, kids. Did you know that 35% of Americans have no money in their savings account? And that 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account? Did you also know that the leading cause of death in the United States for men and women is heart attacks? It kills over 600,000 people a year. So there's some issues that we're facing in trying to self-actualize, reach our full potential, be the best versions of ourselves that is possible. And so I created Existential TV because I actually believe that this conversation of consequence that we're having on this channel with you is a life and death issue. And now I don't say that to be dramatic, so let me illuminate a real life example. When I was 20 years old, I walked into my mother's room only to find Nancy dead. And Nancy was only 51 at the time. She died of a stroke. It's the third leading cause of death. So life is very serious business. And myself, I've had a lot of adversity, a lot of teachable moments, as I like to say, but there's no pity parties here. There's just the wisdom that is illuminated from the adversity. It makes us stronger, it makes us who we are. But I created this channel for you. It's not about me, it's actually for you. I'm just the messenger. I'm gonna share my very diverse 30-year career with you and my 4 books, and now I'm proud to say I'm gonna share my new documentary film, The Awakening, which was just released this year. And it's from a book on philosophy that I wrote called, of course, The Awakening. And it's very existential in nature, which means has to do with our existence, our life, and hopefully preventing our early demise. And I've seen a lot of people in my journey through life leave this existence early. And so regardless of where you're at in your life, whether you're a 20-year-old college student trying to figure out what path you want to go down and what you're passionate about, or whether you're recently divorced, maybe you're unemployed, or you're a corporate CEO and you're looking to gain some insights into what it takes to motivate and inspire people and how do we lead people. So regardless of where you're from and what walk of life you're from, I believe existential TV will hold something for you. So I'm going to share through this channel my 4 books, starting with The Psychology of Higher Living. I wrote that in 2008, and so many people have suffered greatly from the recession. And yet, where do we spend our time? We spend the vast majority of our time satiating our basic needs. And so I illuminate that, and I also illuminate the challenge of reaching your fullest potential, to self-actualize. And where we spend our time and our time management plays a big role in that. One of my more recent books is called Compound Wealth, and it deals with our finances, creating wealth. Now, everybody has a different version of wealth. For some, wealth is creating a family and getting married and having children and being very successful with that. For others, it's a spiritual wealth. For some, it's a wealth with their health, their body, and the kind of exercise that you have and the nutrition you have. And we're going to talk a lot about that here on our YouTube channel. I certainly developed a health consciousness from walking in and finding my mother at the age of 20. And when you find somebody that's dead, that's your family member, it really impacts you and it gives you an awakening. And that's really what the film is about, and what my book is about as well, is what does that awakening mean? Well, it's an awakening of consciousness. It's a shift in consciousness. And so my book, Compound Wealth, has to do with our finances. You know, Americans have over $1 trillion worth of consumer debt. And sadly, we pay on average of 18% just to service that debt. So we're swimming in debt, consumer debt with our credit cards, our auto loans, our mortgage debt. So we're going to talk a lot about that on this channel. But we're not going to just illuminate problems on existential TV. We're also going to deliver solutions. I believe that if you're going to take the time to watch a video, you should walk away with solutions, that you should be able to become a better version of yourself because you're able to implement those solutions. Now, I'm going to share something from my career. And again, for 30 years, I've had a very diverse career, but for a chapter in that career, I was an investment banker. I ran my own boutique investment banking firm, and I worked with startups. And I always used to ask my startup companies, my clients during the dot-com days, what is the problem that your product, that your technology, that your service, that your business is solving? Because if you can illuminate the problem and you are part of the solution, you will come to the marketplace and you will meet with tremendous success. So it's one of the secrets to creating wealth in life is, what is the problem and are you bringing a solution to the marketplace?